So there's just so many hard things happening right now. Trying to homeschool kids, take care of parents, and we're all having this experience together. So I'm so proud of the team at MVP, and I mean, like the way that folks have showed up has been just incredible. The way people have been showing up for their families, the way that people have been showing up for the local groups. Myrna, who couldn't be on this call, has been just a hero supporting so many local groups. And Myrna, and you're going to hear from Kato, who works closely with Myrna. You know, just right before the call, found out Myrna has to deal with some things, so Kato stepped in and is taking over Myrna's part. We're all, you know, Andrea had to take a step back. David is stepping in for her. So we're in an emergency, and we are just all doing the best and supporting each other the best way we can. And I just really want to acknowledge everyone on the MVP team and all our incredible volunteers and local organizers who have been really, I mean, when a crisis happens, that's when we got to really show up for each other. And people have really been showing up for each other. And I can't say how just proud and how much I appreciate you all. I was crying on the call we were doing yesterday, and now I'm crying again. So I know you all feel me, and you have your own versions of this. And you know, this didn't have to happen. Like, I'm so angry. I'm so incredibly angry. Like, when I hear about, you know, these like doctors, nurses, people who work in hospitals who are trying to help people who are being recklessly endangered needlessly because of the terrible, worse than terrible leadership that we have. That's not okay. And that's why we got into this, and it just got worse and worse.
I still can't hear Billy.
Can you all hear me?
Why can't I hear Billy?
Oh, I hear someone.
I can hear you.
Aaron, I can hear you.
Okay. We hear.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Susan, put yourself on mute. Susan, put yourself on mute.
I'm gonna pass it on, and or actually, I'm gonna go through the agenda really quick. So, David, if you can click to the next slide, thanks. So just a couple housekeeping notes. Use video for a better experience. Feel free to invite people onto this call. Use the chat to share Q&A. We're going to do a very streamlined Q&A at the end. Yes, this is being recorded, which is kind of embarrassing with how the last 5 minutes have gone. And we're not going to talk much about Movement Voter Project. If you're new to Movement Voter Project, go to movement.vote. And you can get a lot of background there. And we really want to hear from you all. So we're gonna do an hour. Basically, you can go onto the agenda next, David. Yeah, gonna hear a quick overview. Then we're gonna get into the heart of this call, which is reports from the states. You're gonna hear from Kato in 4 different states, and then. We're going to talk a little bit about donor organizing and how we're pivoting our donor organizing, our incredible local teams and house parties. And then we're going to talk about what you can do. And then we're going to try something we've never done before, which is breakouts. We're going to break out for 15 minutes to talk to each other. And then we reserve the last half hour, or we're going to close the official call, and then we're going to have half an hour of just community sharing. So I want to actually hurry up and get to that because I really want to just hear from you. Click to the next slide, please. This is quick and dirty, how much money we've moved. And this is where it's gone. Click. Yeah, this is numbers. We've, you know, just give it up for the 122 house parties we've had thus far, the 12 local teams who are really kind of the heart and soul of the donor organizing. They're many of you are on the call who have been organizing your hearts out as super volunteers in your communities, organizing house parties. You know, we're like a little over halfway toward our official goal for the cycle, which is 50 million. But we're aiming for 100 million. We know hundreds of millions are needed. So go to the next slide, please.
This is Jason. Just to jump in, that some people are on the phone and asking if you can just make sure to kind of read key things on the slide if they can't see it.
Thank you, Jason. So here are the, our core strategy is to invest in every corner of these big 5 presidential states, because it's going to be close, and we got to make sure that we get this one right. Next slide, please. And it's not just the presidential states, it's the Senate states, it's all sorts of states for all sorts of reasons. Keep clicking.
Where's our state?
And yeah, so we did a gut check with ourselves, like how much has this changed things? And this is our kind of old slide of what success looks like. And basically we're doing all the same things we were doing before. Our goals are all the same, like get Trump out, make sure that we can control the Senate to get, all the reasons, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg. All the reasons, all the things, all our goals are the same, plus some, plus all the things you see. And, my hope in this is that, like when things get bad, like our country has hit bottom, is clearly hit bottom. And, when crisis comes, it's an opportunity. And this is the greatest organizing challenge with the most at stake we've ever had. And we're just going to pull out all the stops to do everything we possibly can to save our country. It's never been more clear why we need to do that. And yes, I'm just incredibly grateful to be doing this with all of you. And for any of you who are feeling despair, is there anyone out there who's been feeling just depressed, demoralized, despair? Like, like we feel you, we're with you, and we're going to build community together. And from this horrible, horrific, unimaginably awful experience that we're going through, we are going to make things better. And 7 months from now, we're gonna like really change this country, and we can still get to the place that we want to go. And yeah, the world too, Analia. So I'm going to pass it to my colleague Kato, who is phenomenal, and she's kind of like one of our like best kept secret weapon. I don't know weapons, but like Kato is phenomenal. She's like, she helps all the groups do all their tech, get like Hustle and access to the van, and she and Myrna work really closely together. And she, also is responsible for multiple states, including the small state of Texas, and also is just, she and Myrna. Texas isn't small, Dad. She's so anyway, Kato, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you for jumping in at the last minute to save us. As always.
Oh, no, well, I'm really grateful to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Caro. My pronouns are she, her, and I live in Houston, Texas. And I serve as part of the state partnerships team, along with Myrna, who couldn't be here today, taking care of family. And really just, I'm here just in MVP, I think, because I truly believe in the power of community. It's definitely been one of those moments when I think continuing to trust each other and come together is the way that we're going to navigate this very difficult time. So grateful to be able to share what our group's experiencing and telling us and sharing with us that they need right now. And so Just before I jump into that piece, I do want to just acknowledge that we are in a time when, we are, I think, asking for a lot of grace and patience and trying to be well within ourselves. I was sharing earlier with a member of our team that I was having a lot of difficulty jumping on some of our staff calls. I was having a little bit of difficulty jumping on some of our staff calls because I was reading about what was happening with with our undocumented community and a lot of working families. And not only that, I was getting text messages and phone calls from my own friends and family who have DACA. I have DACA as well. And my uncle and my cousins who work in the restaurant industry who have just lost their jobs. And as I was, I felt paralyzed. I felt completely paralyzed for like a couple of seconds, and I needed a moment to take a break and just get some air. And I feel like from our conversations, a lot of our organizations are taking a moment of taking a breath and continuing to organize, and taking a breath and continuing to organize. So I definitely want to start off with the thing that continues to give me hope is how our groups have responded to this moment, and how with grace they have continued to dig in deep and continue to have conversations with their communities about what they need and how they need to continue showing up. So 4 key things that I really want to share with folks that folks have shared with us, and we want to make sure that we share and tell everyone that organizations on the ground have been pivoting to remote organizing. From getting on Zoom calls, we just had a group that had 80 members. I don't know if you checked out our Facebook, but we shared folks organizing in Texas, in Pennsylvania, jumping on those Zoom calls, training their own members, some of them who have never jumped on Zoom calls before, or to do hustle texting, or to get on platforms to figure out how to begin getting those laptops and getting everybody ready to work from home. So those things are going to continue to be key. Organizations have not just, sat down and said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? If anything, the community has mentioned they need support, and our organizers are responding. Organizations around the ground are supporting state and local advocacy efforts, from calling upon increasing access to mail-in ballots for the elections, to continuing to push for paid sick leave, for including free COVID testing, and making sure that rent and mortgage moratoriums, deportation moratoriums actually take place, and continuing to put pressure on folks to do this. So for me, it's really key that folks have top of mind the health of our community, including making sure that the civic health of our community doesn't deteriorate. The third thing that folks are really needing right now is unrestricted funding to continue to support staff and community. And we'll share a little bit more about how our organizations have shared with us that some of them are in danger of losing staff, and we need to continue to move quickly. And as in times of immediate need and distress, our organizations are responding in ways that are helping develop and strengthen relationships that they already hold, and continuing to bring together not only Google Docs, but other efforts around mutual aid to make sure that people are informed about where to find things, are supporting each other in case they need food or need additional support with healthcare. So we can go to the next slide to talk a little bit more about specifically how has our work kind of grown and developed throughout this time. If you can click 2 more times on this, that'd be great. I think one of the most important things we can do for our partners right now in a time of crisis is to share. We are here, and we are here for y'all, and listening to what they are telling us and making the reassurance that we are continuing to support their work. So you may not know, but I have really great news that our capacity building tools have actually increased in the amount of kind of support we're providing them. So capacity building is, in addition to funding, we are supporting folks with, if they need trainers, if they need support with facilitators. And right now, more than ever, a lot of folks are telling us we have like folks stepping in who knew a little bit about data and technology, and now they're the ones like supporting the rest of the organization to get up to date. And so our team is moving fast. We have a couple more folks now who are building our effort around capacity building tools. In times of crisis, immediate moving and wellness is going to be key. So we have not only supported folks to make sure that they can keep folks on staff and making sure that folks have the necessary tools, software and hardware, and everything else in between to make sure that folks are able to use this well, but also supporting folks with mental wellness. We even supported organizations to help folks have more access to healthcare and make sure that folks continue to be able to access things like stipends. And we, of course, will continue to build upon the infrastructure support that we have been providing and make sure that in this moment, we are sticking together even more and maintaining those local networks and coming together. So what does this look like in numbers? And I want to be really grateful for the folks who have been supporting our Pandemic Community Fund. If you have not shared it with someone, I definitely invite you to do so. But we have raised $31,092 from 61 donors to support organizations on the ground who have been putting it all into gear to make sure that they show up for their community. So we need your help spreading the word. We can go to the next slide. Because so far we've moved over $1.2 million to 70 plus groups. And what that means for us is folks are able to keep their jobs at a time when so many people are losing them. It means people are hearing from other human beings at a time when so many of us feel so isolated. It means that we are able to have hope and not continue and not lose focus of the fight that we're going to. It means keeping on track of the vision that we're trying to build and winning in 2020. So Florida, for the folks on the phone, was able to receive $685,500. Michigan, $75,000. Pennsylvania, $78,300. Arizona, $62,000, and Wisconsin, $98,500. And this is all really just the amazing support that we have gotten so far, which is why we need to continue to dig deep. So with that, we can go into the next slide. And I'm going to hand it over to our amazing state advisor, Jamila, who will be talking to us about what's going down there. So Jamila?
Hi, everybody. So I'm just going to talk about, what groups are doing in Michigan, how they're responding during the coronavirus crisis. So the first, and a lot of this is kind of repeating what Kato said, but maybe giving a little bit more detail. So the first is that, a lot of groups right now are the hubs of their communities. They are trusted folks in neighborhoods who are responding to immediate basic needs. A couple examples, we have a number of groups who are doing really basic water drops and trying to get water access for families who are shut off right now. So there's been a push and there has been a new policy to get houses back online and to stop water shutoffs. Obviously, water shutoffs are a huge issue across Detroit and some other cities in Michigan, but that has not moved fast enough. And so people are doing a bunch of water drops right now. Another one of our organizations organized a teletown hall for over 1,000 folks yesterday with the city and school district to get information to parents and students in multiple languages about what's going on. So there's a ton of really just like immediate basic need response where groups are just trying to rapidly get their members and get their neighborhoods, emergency support. So at the same time, groups are launching and have launched both kind of immediate, short-term and long-term policy responses. So one of the things in Michigan that almost all of the MVP funded groups pulled together was a statewide policy agenda 3 weeks ago. They all hopped on a call and in a Google Doc together and convened a Just COVID Response website. And so you can go, it's mycovidcommunity.com if you want to actually look through what those demands are. They're similar it's something that's been kind of replicated around the country. A number of states are trying to pull together these statewide agendas in addition to what's launching at the federal level. And so that now has about 90 organizations across the state that have signed on, and the groups are working together to drive and to track those the policies that they've demanded. So, it's some of the stuff Kato talked about, for example, earned paid sick time, expanding unemployment, making sure that folks who are undocumented have access to free healthcare, trying to decarcerate. So that's led by organizations like Michigan Liberation, which is an organization we fund that works on decarceration. And so they're leading some of the work along with Detroit Justice Center and Detroit Action to try to get vulnerable populations out of jail and prison if possible. We the People Michigan, Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation are working especially around immigrant populations, making sure that folks who are detained right now are getting released if possible, if they're vulnerable, or having additional safety precautions. So kind of a series of policy issues like that. I think what's important for me, in addition to just understanding like what groups are doing in terms of their immediate response and in terms of their policy agendas, is thinking about what's the underlying organizing that's happening to move each of those pieces. And so groups are, as Kato said, really shifting and developing some new tactics, using new tools, also returning to some old things that we've done in the past that we haven't done as much, and honing like what really works in a totally remote world, which I think we have to assume is going to last potentially, at least to some extent, through November. And so I think the work that organizations are doing right now, either in getting water out to their members, like EMEAC, the East Michigan Environmental Action Coalition, or doing some of the policy organizing, is helping groups really figure out how they organize well all the way through November. And so, I think that brings us to the last point, which is, I think, we've always talked about election protection. Like this moment has created, election protection takes on a whole new meaning now, because it is possible to imagine a world in which elections do not happen. And so people are organizing, doing a lot of groundwork now, working with the ACLU and others to make sure that we are either having, universal online absentee either having universal online absentee registration, or even just skipping that step and going straight to a vote by mail system here, and ensuring that we're getting all of that in place for November. So, once we get to November, I think what's exciting and important to understand is that all of the work that groups are doing right now is going to be able to kind of reorient and transition towards the electoral organizing that we have spent so many months now building the foundation for. And the tactics that we're learning and honing through this COVID response are what's going to take us through November.
Thanks so much, Jamila. And thank you for just all the work that you're doing on the ground there. Just really appreciate it. Eric is our amazing Florida State Advisor who will be giving us a down low on what's going on the ground there. Hey, Eric, can you hear us?
Yep. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, everyone. Hello from Florida, which is probably one of the states that you're going to be hearing about a lot over the next few weeks, as we're really expecting this crisis to continue to escalate a lot here. When this really took on a new level a couple of weeks ago, we were actually in the middle of a primary election. A lot of MVP's partners in states were doing turnout for the presidential primary election on March 17th, immediately kind of faced the realities of having to shut down door knocking operations the last 3 or 4 days of the election, trying to figure out how to immediately transition into new forms of organizing, and that's a lot what groups have been doing. But I'll talk about that more in a minute because really, as Jamila just outlined in Michigan, kind of the immediate response of taking care of our communities, being there in communities that are struggling during the best of times, and trying to make sure that no one is left out of whatever response is able to happen, is really the most immediate focus of a lot of organizations. There's been over 100 organizations that have come together around a set of demands in Florida. There's a website, floridacoronaaction.org, that kind of outlines both the demands, but also the opportunities, where it helps promote mutual aid in Florida for people to either offer assistance or see where they can get help if needed. And, a lot, Florida's, like I said, during the best of times, there's a lot of, people in our state struggle, high housing costs, low wages. We depend on a service industry here where people don't have things like paid sick days. Like I said, we're living as precarious at best. And so the immediate things that happened right as this crisis escalated, groups, were able to get Miami-Dade County, for example, to become one of the first major municipalities in the country to put a moratorium on evictions right as the crisis was beginning to escalate, placing demands on trying to clear out as much as possible our jails, and making sure that people aren't putting themselves at risk in jail for things like not being able to afford money bail, trying to stop our utilities from shutting off power. And all those things are things where there have been victories in the first few days over the last couple of weeks as this crisis has escalated. But as others have referred to, there's still a lot of people that our government is willing to leave behind, particularly immigrant communities, and trying to make sure that they are getting the resources that they need. Many people who will not be getting one of the relief checks from that was passed through the Senate the other night. Of course, paid sick leave. So our governor has taken the position that he doesn't want to order, a stay-at-home order in Florida because this is best dealt with on a regional or local basis by local communities. And yet our same Republican government, we've had a trifecta Republican state government for 20 years here, has preempted the ability of municipalities to require paid sick leave for workers in their communities. So, we have a government which, is many ways dysfunctional, and that's becoming clear right now. Our unemployment claims have skyrocketed. So just this week, 75,000 new unemployment claims in Florida. That is almost twice the highest level during the economic crisis 12 years ago. We're just, and Florida has some of the lowest unemployment benefits in the country, just $275 per week maximum. So there's a big push to try to get immediate reforms in our unemployment system. And of course, labor unions are, watching, particularly in the hotel and restaurant industry, are watching, the vast majority of their membership being laid off, and not only having to support their members, but having to really figure out what that means for their organization. So lots of crises and things that people are managing. On top of that, we have a number, 8 organizations in the state, and most of which are MVP partners, who since last fall have been scaling up early voter registration program in the state. This is, as many people may know, an opportunity we have in Florida where in 2018 we passed Amendment 4, which undid the lifetime ban on disenfranchisement of returning citizens, people who have felonies. Despite all the obstacles that our state government continues to try to put in the way towards this constitutional amendment being fully implemented, organizations across the state have been registering voters, trying to change the makeup of our electorate, and starting earlier than ever in any previous cycle by scaling up VR since last fall. And one major funder in this time that was significantly funding this effort informed all those organizations, look, we're going to have to shut down for a couple of months until we get through this crisis so people can get back out on the doors. That immediately put a number of MVP's partners in a serious gap of figuring out either how to continue to pay the bills so they can pay up to 500 canvassers across the state between all these programs, all these organizations. Their jobs, these are $15 an hour jobs. These are not, these are folks who are already living on the edge of just making it week by week and really can't afford a missed paycheck. All of a sudden, that those jobs were at line and at risk. And so MVP, along with has been playing a leading role in trying to not only communicate with organizations and try to get them emergency assistance, like the types of tools that Cado was laying out before, but also in trying to find new contributions, both that MVP is helping make happen, and also coordinating with other funders across the country to try to step into this gap, because not only are these 500 canvassers going to be thrown, into a lot of, very difficult personal situations if they have to get laid off, but these programs, which, take a long time to scale up and train people and to get really, running at a high level, instead of that moving into the next year through the summer and into the fall, now we get torn down and then needing to kind of rebuild again in, a couple of months when hopefully, we're able to go do a door-to-door canvassing again. So those are the things that we've been trying to address, and MVP has really played a huge role in the state to help groups through these times, and really with the support of all you on the phone, hopefully we'll be able to get through this and win Florida this fall.
Thanks so much, Eric. Really appreciate you. We're going to now go to our amazing state advisor from Wisconsin, Rima.
Hey, everyone. Really appreciate being able to join you all on this call from out here in Wisconsin. And I want to start with just sharing, briefly, like just a quick reflection that I've had in this moment. Wisconsin, we instituted Safer at Home, our version of shelter in place. Just this past Wednesday, our governor issued this order. And as I've been, before that last week and in the last 2 weeks, been connecting up with our partners, yes, just checking in with one another, making sure that folks are being safe, that they are healthy, that they have some of the basic needs that they have. The thing I feel overwhelmingly, and I recognize that I also am privileged in the sense that I get to be at home. I'm very lucky that, I have a great team with MVP that we are able to stay, to shelter in place and work from home, and that my family members are also keeping safe. But that this is a moment for us to live our values. And this is something that I'm hearing over and over again from our partners in the state. And I bring this up because folks may or may not know, I saw a couple of notes in the chat, but as of this moment, we still have an election 11 days from now on April 7th. Out here. This is an election that's both important statewide because we have a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court that is up, but also have many local races, whether we're talking about mayoral races, county races, as well as out here in Milwaukee, a very important public school referendum that would increase funding for Milwaukee public schools. So on the one hand, we have partners that have been amazingly pivoting their programs when hour by hour, it seems, circumstances are changing. but also needing to meet the needs, the very human needs of our community members and their organization members. And so a couple of things I just want to uplift that groups out here are doing. One is that folks are keeping their canvassers on staff. And I want to uplift this because I know some small businesses, bigger businesses have fired their staff members or are relying on those workers to, be at home and burn through their savings. But many of our partners have committed that they hired these canvassers, and yes, they're no longer going to be going door to door, but there are other ways that these folks will be able to still plug in, connect with community, make sure folks are getting educated on what we can still do around this election and are turning their vote by mail. I was going to say turning out to vote, but turning out not literally to vote, but requesting mail-in ballots. And that's really what this election is looking like right now. We actually had early voting. We still have early voting in Wisconsin right now. I'll say from the city of Milwaukee, there is no longer in-person early voting, but the overwhelming request that partner groups are making on the ground here is request an absentee ballot, fill that ballot out and return it. And I say all this because we also out here have several lawsuits that different partner organizations are a part of to do a number of things. Some of our partners are calling to postpone this election because we have this safer at home order in place. If it is not, if our governor is calling on us to stay at home, this means that we're actually not able to get out and vote. And we shouldn't be asking poll workers to get out and vote as well. And so if we are putting this unprecedented burden on our city clerks and election commissions, we need to understand that this is actually going to inevitably cause some voter disenfranchisement, and we would be better off by postponing this election. So that's one of the lawsuits that are in place. We have other lawsuits that are calling to waive voter ID and witness requirement laws, because out here, even if you are registered to vote and you request a ballot, you receive that ballot in the mail, you still need to actually get that ballot witnessed by another person who is, at the very least, a US citizen that can witness this ballot before you mail it off. And for folks that are doing physical isolation, maybe at home without partners or other family members, this puts a huge burden on whether you are able to actually vote or risk going outside, getting this, your ballot witnessed by a neighbor or going to an early voting location to get this ballot witnessed. So we're seeing all these challenges to just being able to vote. And again, our organizations are pivoting. They're doing what they can. We were able to move over $90,000 to partner groups, as you saw in a previous slide, to help them get things like Hustle, so they can text voters instead of going door to door. We have relational organizers that are now doing things like vote tripling. I don't know if folks have heard of vote tripling before. It's almost like creating like a voting tree. So you talk to 3 people in your network, make sure that they do everything they need to do to get out to vote. So that goes from registering to vote, requesting a ballot, sending in their ballot, and then each of them get 3 of their family friends to do the same. So folks out here are innovating. They are making the pivots that they need to be able to still turn people out to vote, assuming that we have an election still in 11 days. And again, are doing so while still holding the fact that communities have very real needs. I heard from one of our partners, Block, that as their canvassers were making phone calls and texting folks in the community, they got a response back that, I'm sorry, I can't vote right now. I need to make sure that we have food. We don't actually have any food. Do you know where there are local food banks? So not only are our partners and their staff still working on this election, but also meeting the very human needs that we have out here. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional because I know the organization that was receiving some of those texts, and it's hard because if we as advocates who understand the importance of voting and still operating within the system as it is right now are starting to question, like, wait, should I be asking somebody to vote, or should I be sending them to information and resources on where they can get a meal for them and their family members? I mean, it's it's a heart-wrenching moment and challenge for us to be experiencing right now. And I know that we're all experiencing in different ways across the country. So all that is to say, again, at this moment, we still have an election 11 days right now. The groups are doing everything they can to maintain safety and encourage safety and healthy habits of our communities while still encouraging people to get out and vote. And even after all this is said and done, we're still going to need to support these organizations as they do some of the basics that my colleagues Jamila and Eric pointed out, just helping folks to better understand digital organizing, get back to basics and learning better techniques around phone banking and texting. How do we build relationships virtually when we can't do so in person? So the need is still out here, and really grateful for folks' support to make sure that we're able to meet the needs that our communities have.
Thank you so much, Rima, and for grounding the experience of our communities at this moment. Thank you. I'm going to pass it on now to Laura, who will be talking to us about what's going on in Minnesota, including mutual aid work.
Y'all.
Laura? Awesome.
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, y'all. Oh, it's so great to see all your faces today. I guess I want to start by just lifting up the entire idea of mutual aid as the glue that's going to hold us together throughout this crisis. And for us all not to think of this as an extra nice add-on to the work that we're already doing, but actually core to the work that we're doing, that we have to meet the groups and our communities where they are right now, which is in dire crisis. And the work that we do right now around mutual aid is going to lead us to success in November. They're going to remember who stood with them now, and then we're going to actually be able to, I mean, this is all about relational organizing. Almost all our partners do this work, and that has to be done by meeting people where they are right now. And in that sense, I think that MVP is really like made for this moment, because we are supporting groups who are deeply integrated, really at the core of all these communities already. We're not dropping in, there's no parachuting, so we're already on the ground and hearing directly all the needs as they come up. I wanted to just highlight a couple of particular mutual aid projects here in Minnesota that sprung up really quick. So the first is that our partner Navigate Unidos, which is Latinx organization, statewide organization in Minnesota, and is led by undocumented people and really organizes mixed status families across the state, created an immigrant family fund and put it out online in a GoFundMe, and they raised $25,000 already, just in really small, like $25, $50 donations from people across our state. So that was amazing. And they are, those funds are going to people who have lost jobs, and particularly for medical care, because as you all know, at this point, none of the relief packages, either statewide or federal, include undocumented people at all. Or even, I'm not even sure if they include green card holders at this point. So that's an incredible resource, and I know there are other projects like that in other states, but it's an example. And then a second one, a smaller organization called Women for Political Change, which is a youth organizing group that works mainly on campuses here in our state. They pivoted so quick. So we had our primary here on Super Tuesday, and they had actually done an incredible job turning out young people on campuses across the state. Even though everyone said young people didn't turn out, that actually is not true. They turned out in really high numbers here in Minnesota. It's just the overall turnout was so big that it kind of dwarfed the youth turnout, but they were there in Duluth and at the U of M here in Minneapolis. They created a fund immediately. Two weeks ago, they contacted me and said they were putting together a mutual aid fund because so many of their members were getting evicted from the campuses and had immediate financial needs, just like to buy groceries. So they put together a fund. We agreed to put a $2,500 match on the table for them, and they were able to match that with online fundraising over that weekend. And then they are now making $200 grants available to members and folks in the community who need basically to buy groceries to get through this next few weeks. And then there's another, it's not listed up here, but there's another fantastic project out of Virginia. Cara, should I go ahead and talk about Virginia, or is someone else talking about that? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. That the Virginia Student Power, one of our core groups in Virginia, also created a really dynamic mutual aid fund that, like, fast, and it's so good that they just got $1 million grant from a local foundation who wanted to get money out fast and realized that they were best positioned to be able to do that and to reach a really broad group of people. So those are the kind of things that are going on all over the country and that we're supporting, and that we really believe, again, it's not just the moral thing to do, it's an incredible organizing opportunity for all of us to deepen our connections with the communities that we want to turn out in November. Pass it back to you, Caro.
Oh, and actually, I think we might be passing it to me to pass to David Mendels to talk about local organizing. And David, thank you for jumping in and pitch hitting for Andrea. David, are you there? And first of all, I just want to give so much appreciation to you all and all the local organizations that are doing this work. I just sitting on this call, I just feel so overcome with just gratitude for your all's brilliance and incredible organizing and local partners. It's just it's such an honor to be in relationship with you all from my little town in Massachusetts that's not on the front lines really of any of this. So thank you.
Hi everyone. This is David. Yeah, so thank you, Billy, and thank you everyone. Like many people on the call, my first engagement with Move and Voter Project was as a donor. I got introduced to it by Laura, then I met Billy. I just, fell in love with what we're doing here and became a volunteer and a super volunteer, and now I'm actually on the team. And, we're in this moment of crisis as a country, and in many cases in our families and in our immediate, lives around us. And it just, to me, it's just very meaningful to be able to be part of something that actually is doing something meaningful. And as Laura pointed out, by organizing, by working with these local community groups that are doing electoral work, but also just supporting their communities, that is the best electoral work. And so being part of this, I don't know, it's very meaningful to me, and I really appreciate everyone who's a part of it, and obviously all the local groups. And every time I hear the state advisors, and I'm part of MVP, it's just incredibly exciting and moving to see the work that we're a part of. And so thank you all for being a part of that, and I invite you all to engage as much as possible. So let me talk about how everyone can help. Give, host, plan, testify. And I'll talk a little bit about these, but we really need everyone who can, and we know, by the way, I think we should name this, that a lot of you are probably going through tough times, and it may be health, it may be family's health, it may be caregiving, it may be as a result of the economic crisis that we're in. And so we acknowledge that, and so when I say this, I say it with acknowledgement of that, but to the degree that everybody can think about what's possible and how you can help, this is a time to help, because we've got 7 months to the election, but we've got hours and days and weeks for our community groups to be able to preserve their staff and support their communities and organize their communities and get out the vote in Wisconsin and so on and so forth. And so really appreciate what everyone is able to do. So I think that the URL has been posted already in the chat window, but just to speak for one moment, we have started this Pandemic Community Fund. We supplemented that with our general funds, as I think Billy mentioned in the chat. And this is a way to make an immediate impact. We're moving funds very quickly to a wide range of groups, as always, in the key states that are going to decide the future of the country. Any donations up to $5,000, please use our online link here. For larger gifts, and also for C3 gifts. This is possible both C3 and C4. And so that can the different paths are valuable for different people. So please feel free to reach out to us at advisor@movement.vote if you want to help discuss larger gifts or C3 giving or stock transfers. So again, acknowledging the position everyone's in right now, really thank you in advance for thinking and digging deep where you can. What else can you do now? So I think Billy mentioned earlier, we're up to over 100 house parties over the last 4 or 5 months. And obviously house parties are not the way to go in the era of social distancing. So we're moving towards virtual house parties. We've done a couple. We're still experimenting with format, but we're getting better, I think, each time. And so we're gonna ramp this up over the next few weeks. We're not quite ready to ramp it up this week, but over the next few weeks we will be. And really invite you, wherever you are, this is an opportunity to invite your family, your friends, your network, colleagues, to join you and to talk about the moment, to talk about what we're doing to try and change our leadership in this country. We can support you with presentation materials, with speakers, with support. And definitely welcome you to do this. I just want to say that my first reaction was, man, house parties have this sort of personal human element with, face-to-face human contact. And it's going to be really hard to replace that with virtual house parties. And I've had a chance now to participate in, I think, 2 or 3 of them. And I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised. They have worked well. There's been a lot of engagement. People have really appreciated that opportunity to come together and talk about what's going on and what can we do to change things. So, and in many ways, they're easier. You don't have to buy the wine and cheese. Second, national donor organizing. This is more for if you want to talk to your family or close friends or close network, people of means, to be honest, for one-on-one conversations, talk to people who are thinking about how can I have an impact, what should I do, how are you getting involved? If you want to share how you're giving at this point and help other people decide how they want to have an impact, that's what our National Donor Organizing team is about. And we can support you in many ways. We have monthly workshops. In April, we'll be doing one about sort of how to pitch MVP. And so I invite anybody who feels like they want to take that step of talking to their friends or their family about MVP and is part of those sort of networks of people of means where that kind of work makes sense. Definitely invite you to reach out to me, David, at movement.vote. And then lastly, Billy mentioned our 11 local teams. I won't mention them all, but the Bay Area and DC and Eastern Mass, Seattle, we have incredible local teams. And they're all looking to grow, to add volunteers. And then there are definitely opportunities to create new local teams. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to Adriana at movement.vote as well. So with that, I think we're going to move into the breakout group discussions. Just to set the stage for what's happening here, you'll get a prompt on Zoom to enter the breakout. And it'll be groups of 10 to 15 people. Each one will have someone from MVP or a volunteer as a facilitator. But we just want an opportunity. We want to hear from you. We don't want to just talk to you, to talk about this prompt. Given where we are at the intersection of a global pandemic and a critical election year, how are you being called to respond in your giving, and how are you organizing your networks? So we'd love just to have some discussion and give everyone a chance to contribute. And so let's do that. Let's jump into these breakout rooms. But afterwards, Billy will have a few closing words, and then we'll have some more time for community sharing as well, hopefully at the end.
Everyone.
Hello.
So, hi. So what we're gonna do is just do quick closing thoughts, and want to hear quickly from as many people as possible. Name where you are and something you're taking away from this call or inspired to do or feeling, and your name. So so dive right in. Don't hesitate. We have 15 minutes, so just jump on in and talk.
So this is Jackie, and I'm in Chicago, and we just had a great breakout session. And I just wanted to say one of the things that keeps coming up, one of the best things, I think it was Jill Kearney on our call saying, you got to trust the process and trust the people, which we do here at MVP, which is it's always a nice anybody who can say that about us is so fantastic. And then also, but we also heard that people are looking for like names of organizations with specific things that are happening instead of, and I think groups are still figuring that out, but really interesting sort of bullet points like that would be helpful too. So this has been great. This was great.
So this is Barbara Wilson in San Francisco, and I'd just like to give a shout out to Jason, who came up with an amazing idea for working families who have capacity to have a Zoom cocktails after kids call. And I think I can't wait to suggest that to my kids who have some connections.
Great idea. Hi, Barbara.
And just to follow up on that, thanks, Barbara. This is Jason. I would say the other piece that I have been suggesting to people is you don't have to do a full house party. Like MVP cocktails with 6 people, and even if you just talk about MVP for 15 minutes and then you just go to catching up with friends is another really easy way to organize that doesn't take as big a load. Still do virtual house parties, but you might have like 4 or 5 people and just saying like, hey, I'd love to talk to you. I'm really worried about the election, and how about we have cocktails, catch up, and I want to talk to you about this idea that I've got. Like that can be a lower lift way to take a step too.
One of the things we talked about this morning, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead, Arlene, and then I'll go after you.
Okay, I'm Arlene, we're in Western Mass, and one of the things we talked about today is that we've been doing house parties with real people in real rooms. Now we can do house parties with our friends around the country, rather than the people who live near us. So that's another opportunity this provides.
Thanks, Arlene.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
Okay. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm in San Francisco. I really appreciate everyone's great ideas that are coming from the breakouts. In my breakout room, we actually did talk a little bit about some of us are in tougher situations. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to remind everybody to just be gentle with yourself as well. One of our staff members here, Aram, did a virtual event the other day, and he mentioned a quote that really stuck with me. He said, whatever the question, community is the answer. So even if that means you just checking in with just your close friends and family and focusing on that at this time, that's great. And we're already doing a lot by being here and being in community.
Thank you.
Yeah. Going off of that, I'm here with an organization called Men for Choice, where we recruit men to be trained to step up as allies for reproductive rights. And I was hired as a digital organizer, and it was supposed to be several months of online stuff to then catalyze offline activity. And of course, this hits right when the offline stuff was supposed to be happening. So at first we were like, oh my gosh, we've been building this up, and how are we going to gather people in Florida, Georgia, and Ohio? But we're sort of now thinking of it, okay, like obviously we have no choice but to stay at home. The opportunity we have within that is actually we kind of, people are looking on their screens all the time. So how do we grab their attention? And with this extra time, while people are really thinking through the big questions, how do we add our voices to that platform? We're like, hey, here's how you can learn how to step up for reproductive rights. And people might be more attentive to that because they're really thinking things through in this moment. We wouldn't all be talking with each other and getting a sense that everyone's feeling some version of what we're feeling. So there's always, there's the deficits are clear, but the opportunity is there as well.
So I'll just say what I put in the chat, which is I think this is in terms of taking care of ourselves. I think this is a time not for social distancing. It's a time for physical distancing and social closeness. And if we keep that in mind in everything we do, it helps us stay a lot more connected.
I just want to, I just want to add what a great call and how exciting to see what's going on in the different states and how big this is. And the main thing that I'm finding in the moment is what a joy it is to see each other's faces when we're spending all the time alone. So ironically, it creates a really warm feeling between people. And that's a good thing to move this along too. To use that because it's such a joy to see people you actually like. You're feeling separated from and meeting new people like that.
Hey, this is Mara from the Bay Area team. I was in a small group that included Katie, the state advisor for Pennsylvania, and I just wanted to share something really helpful that she mentioned, which is that, you know, adding on to the idea that this is not only the moral thing, but the strategic thing to do electorally, you know, is that the people that MVP is trying to move to vote are people who don't trust the government, and that's kind of being exacerbated right now. So helping to build that trust for people, you know, putting that work in now to make people more credible messengers in November is exactly the right thing to be doing. And this is, you know, the civic engagement work that we need to do. So I really appreciate hearing that, and I'm feeling even more grateful for MVP in this time.
This is Joan Landcourt in Brookline, Massachusetts. And I just wanted to, again, share something that was talked about in our small group. You know, the usual thing about change is that it's human nature to resist change. And I think we're in a situation now where things are going to change. And what we talked about, what our facilitator put front and center was, things are going to change and we can shape them in a direction better than where we are now. And I think that, you know, that's one of the core beliefs that makes me want to be engaged in this project.
Hey, this is Rebecca from Chicago. One of the things that came out of our group, and I actually think it was Jonathan who had shared this, that is really helpful, is you know, hearing some of the stories about how these organizations are shifting their work, or the unique challenges that these organizations are overcoming. I think that for a lot of folks, you know, they might, I think there are some folks out there that just think that organizing stopped in the way that all the other types of industries have stopped, right? But the reality is that organizers have always been some of the most nimble in, you know, workforce in our country, who's always been working in always changing conditions. And this is a condition in which organizing can thrive too. And I think MVP has really emulated what it looks like to be nimble and to be innovative, and member organizations have been that way. And so more stories about how folks are civically innovating in this moment, and telling more of those stories made a lot of sense to me.
This is so great to hear from people. Let's keep it going. We got a few more minutes.
Hello, this is Terry from Chicago. In our group, I talked about the attacks that are going on with regard to reproductive rights around the country, and there are anti-choice demonstrators outside clinics in Chicago still. This pandemic has not stopped them from harassing women going in to get reproductive health care services. And just as an FYI, the National Reproductive Rights Law Center filed a lawsuit last night to stop Texas from imposing its cutoff of all abortion services in Texas. So things are so horrible out there in so many states for people seeking reproductive health care.
This is Wendy Volkman. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I want to put out there that I think that something that helps, I know it helps me, and I've heard it helps a lot of other people, is to choose something positive and do it. And it gives a feeling of production and moving forward instead of just kind of spinning wheels. And so I told Naomi Sobel that I would be very happy to host an online Movement Voter Project party. And I'm saying that out loud here in hopes to encourage other people who would like to do something positive to sign up with them on these virtual house parties. And I'd be happy to be a guinea pig in an earlier stage, or once you guys get it all polished up, to guide me through doing it later on. And I hope everybody stays really safe and well. Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy, and huge shout out to Wendy, who's been down with Movement Voter Project since way before it existed. So great to hear you. And I mean, this is such a great opportunity to like build and rebuild community in all of our networks and connections. It's just so incredibly moving to just see all of you and your names and voices and faces. So a couple more people, please share.
Hi, this is Catherine in Washington, D.C. And I am really grateful, Billy, to you and all of the MVP team for re-energizing me. The COVID crisis has really been such an emotional experience as somebody who works directly with working poor, vulnerable Black and Brown families. And I was really thinking like, okay, well, this is the end of the line for me with MVP because I have other things on my mind, but this is just really helpful to bring it back and refocus on what is really just so urgent, which is keeping our eyes on the election. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Couple last people. Don't be shy.
So this is Andrew in outside of Boston, part of the Eastern Mass team, and I'm a volunteer with MVP, and I feel as you did, Catherine, about sort of losing steam in the midst of the COVID work in my family and in my neighborhood. And Laura Flynn's observation that the mutual aid work is actually the work completely made sense to me and has helped me understand that as I go forward and think with my family about what else we can do, this is what we can do. And we can do it in a lot of different ways. If we have to do things in neighborhoods and community, that's great. But to the extent that we're trying to move the nation, we can do the mutual aid we want to do. We can do it through MVP. And that felt like something dropped into place for me in a different way. And MVP has just been, this community, there's 200 people on a call. It's just mind-blowingly great. And I'm so grateful to everyone who's lifting, and I can feel the work and I can also feel the pain. And I'm really so appreciative of people's sacrifice, which is what I'm hearing a lot of. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think, thank you for that thought, Andrea. I think it really synthesizes how a lot of us are feeling. And so unless there are any other closing thoughts, why don't we declare victory on this call and just, I mean, incredible gratitude to everyone for everything you're doing in your lives, with Movement Voter Project, in your communities, with other organizations. We're all in this together. And that's really the headline of all of this is we are truly, if we didn't know it before, we really know now we're all in this together. And we're just so grateful to have all of you on this journey with us, and anything you want to do that we can support you. We're going to do mutual aid with each other within the Movement Voter Project family. And that is how we're going to save our communities and our loved ones and our country. And we're going to end the world, Analia. Thank you for being here with me, Analia, and experiencing this. It means so much to me. And to you and all your loved ones. Go team, and let's make the world we want out of this terrible situation. Yeah.
Hey. Here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.